Hi, welcome to Fong's Fables. Let's start the story now. As the Lunar New Year approached, I had just sealed a $10 million deal for my company. I was already dreaming about my well-deserved bonus and a vacation abroad when bam, the boss suddenly changed the bonus policy. My expected $500,000 bonus was slashed to just $50,000. Furious, I confronted him, only to be fired on the spot. Andy, don't think you're that important. The company is full of talent. You're just another 996 worker. Do you really think you can win a lawsuit against us? Worst case, we'll hire more lawyers and drag it out for a year or two. Let's see how long you can hold out. But when the company was actually taken to court, guess who suddenly blew up my phone with 500 calls a day, crying and begging me to come back? When the newly appointed partner called me into the meeting room, I was busy drafting New Year's greetings. Over a year of relentless effort had finally paid off. I had spearheaded the development of a groundbreaking AI model and landed a massive deal worth $10 million. Our client, a major tech giant, Penguin Core. Their director, Leo, was thrilled with our AI project and promised to sign the contract next month. My wife and I were ecstatic $500,000 in project bonuses. We had already planned, half for the mortgage, half for a dream vacation abroad. That night, we went to bed smiling. I closed my laptop and walked briskly into the meeting room. Andy, come in, have a seat. My boss, Brian, greeted me warmly, pointing to the chair across from him while handing me a cup of freshly brewed black coffee. Andy, you've been with us for 3 years now, right? We started as a tiny team of a dozen people, and now we're over 100 strong. Your contributions have been invaluable. The company is finally pulling through. Our latest round of funding is almost complete. You and Director Henry's hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. I couldn't hide my smile as I lifted my coffee. For 3 years, I had worked like an unstoppable machine, every day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., day in and day out, optimizing models, refining algorithms. With no marketing budget, no connections, no resources, I had relied purely on my technical passion to break through countless obstacles. Late nights tweaking parameters, weekend overtime building demos, debugging until I felt like losing my mind. It was all part of the job. And now, the once unknown startup had transformed into a rising star in AI. I knew Henry had always valued me, but I hadn't expected Brian, the new boss, to immediately acknowledge my efforts. A mix of surprise and pride swelled in my chest. I was ready to respond modestly when Brian spoke again. But Andy, while we secured funding, every penny is going into R&D and marketing. We're still not profitable, and cash flow is extremely tight. On top of that, competition is fierce. Price wars are cutting deep into our margins. A bad feeling crept up my spine. So, the board has decided to adjust your bonus calculation. Instead of 5%, we'll now be using 0.5%. I froze, my smile instantly wiped away as if doused in ice water. Wait, so my $500,000 bonus is now? Yes, about $50,000 under the new structure, Brian confirmed, slightly annoyed at my interruption but quickly regaining his composure. I understand your frustration, but we're at a critical turning point. Cash flow is everything right now. Honestly, in this economy, getting any bonus at all is already a privilege. He patted my shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry, we take care of our key employees. In the future, we'll introduce stock incentives. Keep up the good work, and the sky's the limit for you. I laughed coldly in my head. Stock incentives? Who even gets those? A single board decision had just slashed my bonus by 90%. The fire in me flickered out. After work, I called Henry, no answer. I messaged him on WhatsApp, no reply. Frustrated, I took 3 days off, lying at home in a daze. My wife, who was furious at first, eventually calmed down and consoled me. Andy, don't take it too hard. You're already among the top in this field. One project's bonus doesn't define your worth. Besides, remember last year's company raffle? They gave us a robot vacuum. That was their way of appreciating you too. I sighed. The lost bonus stung, but what could I do? Quitting impulsively was risky, and finding a new job meant starting from scratch. Just endure it for now, I thought. But what happened next made my blood boil. On Tuesday morning, as soon as I sat at my desk, Dave from HR approached me. Andy, you missed yesterday's meeting. Were you out with a client? You need to sign an attendance form with HR. Wait, what? Henry approved my flexible hours. I've been working late on an AI proposal for a major client, so I might not always be in early. Yeah, about that. The company's implementing strict attendance policies now. Everyone has to clock in. If you need flexibility, you have to apply in advance. I frowned. So now I have to ask for permission to adjust my hours, even when I'm working late for the company. Dave handed me a document. This is the new performance management policy. You should take a look. I skimmed through it, and my jaw dropped. Full attendance bonuses had doubled to $500, but they were now deducted from our base salaries. On top of that, penalties for tardiness and absences had doubled as well. If I arrived late, not only would I lose my attendance bonus, but I'd also have my salary docked, anywhere from hundreds to even over $1,000. And to make matters worse, the bonus calculation method had been revised again. What the hell is this? I stormed into Brian's office, where Henry was also present. They both greeted me with forced smiles. Andy, relax. The changes are for efficiency. Plus, you're one of our core team members. In the future, we'll compensate with stock incentives. Just focus on the project. Your future here is bright. I clenched my fists, barely holding back my anger. Thanks for the vote of confidence, but let's talk facts. We agreed on a $500,000 bonus. I worked my ass off for over a year. At least honor the 5%. Other companies offered me $1 million salary, but I stayed for loyalty. And now you're slashing my bonus and forcing a rigid attendance system? What happened to flexible hours? Henry and Brian exchanged glances. Brian's patience snapped. Andy, you're being unreasonable. This company gave you a platform to shine, and instead of gratitude, you're making trouble. If you don't like it, you're fired. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Then I'll need a formal termination letter. Also, according to labor law, a unilateral dismissal requires severance pay. Brian sneered. Severance? Andy, we have evidence that you leaked company data to a competitor. That's grounds for immediate dismissal. No payout. My eyes widened. What? That's a damn lie. Henry smirked. Think what you want. We're being generous by offering 2 months' base salary. As for bonuses, verbal promises don't count. You got paid. What else do you want? I clenched my fists, shaking with rage. You're breaking labor laws. If you don't compensate me fairly, I'll file a complaint. Henry laughed. Andy, don't overestimate yourself. You think you can win. We'll just hire more lawyers and drag this out for years. Let's see how long you last. At that moment, I realized employees like me were disposable to them. So I packed my things, took one last look at the place I had poured my soul into, and walked out the door. My wife looked at me anxiously and carefully asked, Honey, we haven't even finished paying off our mortgage yet. What if you can't find a suitable job anytime soon? I forced a bitter smile. Don't worry, I've saved up some money over the years. And with my skills, I can always find a decent job elsewhere. Besides, haven't you been killing it with your novel writing lately? Who knows, maybe when you publish your book, it'll be a bestseller. Hearing that, she wiped away her tears and playfully scolded me. Oh, stop it. You and your sweet talk. I'm just a literary fiction writer. The best I can hope for is to make enough to support myself. I ruffled her hair affectionately, suddenly feeling a deep sense of security. The mortgage was already halfway paid off, so the pressure wasn't unbearable. Losing my job, as frustrating as it was, forced me to reflect on my career. Instead of being just another cog in a big corporation, maybe it was time to explore a more promising direction. That afternoon, as I was updating my resume, my former colleague Anna called me out of the blue, her voice dripping with mystery. Andy, guess what I just saw on Quora? Our dear Henry is on there running his mouth, claiming they fired someone for stealing company code. He's making it sound like if they hadn't stopped you in time, the company's top-secret AI project would have been leaked. What? I nearly dropped my phone. That's insane. He's twisting the truth completely. Exactly. They're trying to ruin your reputation so you won't be able to work in the industry again. That way, you won't end up at a competitor and threaten their business. I was livid. These people would stop at nothing for their own gain. My wife sighed, looking at me with concern. Honey, don't waste your energy on these people. Your talent speaks for itself. You don't need to stoop to their level. Taking a deep breath, I nodded firmly. She was right. Arguing with small-minded people was beneath me. The best way to fight back was to succeed. And as it turned out, I didn't even have to respond to Henry's smear campaign. His post only confirmed that I had officially left the company. Then, before I even had time to dwell on my next move, my phone started blowing up. Andy, I heard you left One Creative. Our department is looking for a tech lead. Would you be interested in an interview? Andy, remember that AI project we discussed earlier? If you're free now, why not come check out our company? For the next few days, HR reps and headhunters from top tech companies kept reaching out. It was almost comical how the industry worked. One moment you're being thrown under the bus, the next, you're the hottest talent on the market. Even director Leo couldn't help but chuckle. Andy, I bet Henry and Brian never saw this coming. They tried to crush you, and instead, you became the most sought-after expert. Talent like yours is priceless. Every company wants a top AI specialist these days. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Just a few days ago, I was worried about finding a job. Now, I had too many offers to sort through. But most of them were insincere. They wanted my skills but weren't willing to give me the position or salary I deserved. How was that any different from One Creative? So, I turned down the recruiters one by one, except for Leo. Not because we were particularly close, but because he had been my point of contact when I first signed my contract. He had always treated me fairly, and when One Creative was spreading rumors about me, he was the only one who spoke up in my defense. But fate had a sense of humor. When I arrived at Leo's company for an interview, I ran into none other than Henry. Turns out, Leo's company was negotiating a strategic partnership with One Creative, and Henry was personally handling the deal. He was busy schmoozing Leo, nodding and bowing like a sycophant. Director Leo, it's truly an honor to have you visit us. We'll do everything we can to meet your needs and make this collaboration a success. Ah, Henry, no need to be so formal, Leo replied with a polite smile. We're all in the same industry. Let's look out for each other. I stepped forward, cutting off their conversation. Director Ma, sorry to keep you waiting. Henry turned around, and the moment he saw me, his face went through a series of transformations: shock, panic, and finally anger. Leo, noticing the tension, patted Henry on the shoulder with a knowing grin. Mr. Henry Wong, let me introduce you to Andy, the lead on our new AI project. He's young, but he's already at the top of the field. Weren't you looking for a tech consultant? Why not let Andy take on that role? After all, he's currently between jobs. Haha. Henry's face turned an ugly shade of gray. He glared at me, then quickly forced a smile. Leo, you must be joking. Of course, we're happy to cooperate, but I know Andy's skills all too well. I'm just not sure he's up to the task. Leo didn't even acknowledge his remark and instead turned to me. Andy, One Creative recently proposed a deal. They offered to license the AI algorithm you developed in exchange for access to our client data for their big data analysis. I was considering it, but now that you're here, I don't have to hesitate anymore. Hearing this, my heart filled with a mix of emotions: anger, disgust, and a hint of dark amusement. One Creative had cut my bonus, forced me to hand over my core algorithm, then fired me. Now they were trying to sell my work behind my back while profiting from it. And to think I almost let it slide out of nostalgia. I turned to Henry, my voice icy. Director Henry, since we're being honest, let me make this clear. The AI algorithm I developed is not One Creative's property. The contract clearly states that I retain the intellectual property rights. If you use it for commercial purposes without my permission, that's copyright infringement. I have no problem taking you to court over it. Henry's face went pale. He stammered, "Hey Andy, let's not escalate things. There's been a misunderstanding. I never intended to." I waved him off impatiently. "Save it. Weren't you the one claiming on Quora that I stole company code? I have nothing to say to you. My lawyers will handle the rest." Henry looked desperately at Leo for help, but Leo just sipped his tea and said with a smirk, "Henry, let me give you some advice. Don't play dirty in business. Andy is my employee now, and our company respects intellectual property. If you plan to use his algorithm, you'll have to deal with Penguin Core's legal team first." At the mention of Penguin Core's legal team, infamous for winning every case they took, Henry visibly shuddered. Realizing he was cornered, he mumbled an excuse and scurried away. I had expected One Creative to come crawling back eventually, but even I was surprised at how quickly they folded. 2 days later, I was on my balcony, organizing project documents to wrap things up for my new employer, when out of nowhere, my old boss's partner, Brian, called. I hesitated, torn between answering and ignoring it. But the phone kept ringing, as if it wouldn't stop until I picked up. No choice. I had to put down my papers. Andy, why didn't you give us a detailed breakdown of the contract requirements beforehand? Brian's voice shot up several octaves, full of frustration. Leo's team is saying we violated the service level agreement. Now they want to cancel the contract and sue us for breach. What do we do? Were you just waiting to watch us crash and burn? His barrage of accusations was beyond irritating. Sorry, but Henry has all the project documentation and implementation plans I wrote. If you guys forgot, that's on you, not me. And by the way, when you fired me, you didn't even give me a chance to hand things over. With that, I hung up without hesitation. What a joke. The Penguin Core project wasn't something you could just wing. Over the past year, I had been leading the core development, working late into the night, solving endless technical challenges. I knew every detail inside out. Every function was designed and implemented by me. Even when Leo's team was deploying the system, I guided them through debugging for a whole week. I was the project manager, lead developer, implementer, and support, all rolled into one. So, it was no surprise that the client insisted I stay in charge. My wife peeked out from the study, barely holding back laughter. Oh wow, your ex-boss is something else. He really knows how to pin everything on you. I nodded in agreement. But the next morning, I received an unexpected meeting invitation. At a Starbucks in Cary Center, Henry and Brian were already waiting at a booth, a few paper bags on the table. Henry coughed awkwardly and pushed an Americano toward me, smiling obsequiously. Andy, you have no idea. We haven't been able to secure funding for multiple rounds. Brian was just acting on impulse when he made that rash decision. You know how startups are, ups and downs are inevitable. Don't take it to heart. Come back and work with us. We'll pay you the bonus we promised. Brian's face turned white with anger, but quickly softened. Andy, we really need you. The new engineers are completely clueless about the project. They can't even handle basic deployment. Leo's team already sent us a legal notice, breach of contract, demanding compensation. Henry sighed. And it's not just Leo. Other clients are also complaining. Just last week, Director Sun came to our office, threatening to terminate the contract because of constant system failures. Brian's expression was grim, his voice strained. Andy, you've worked on this project for over a year. It's so close to success. Can you really bear to watch it collapse? If we pay the penalty, the company might not survive. A lot of people will lose their jobs. Have you thought about that? Even now, Brian was trying to guilt-trip me into returning. I smirked. These problems aren't my fault. What's the point of saying all this? I paused, then added, I'm not coming back. But if you wire me the $500,000 in bonuses and severance I'm owed, I'll finish this phase of Leo's project. Brian exhaled, relieved, and the two of them quickly agreed. I sipped my coffee and added, however, I'm only handling the final phase and handover. After that, you're on your own. Without hesitation, Brian pulled out his phone and transferred me $600,000 on the spot. Back home, my wife cheered. Honey, your boss is such an idiot. If he'd treated you better, none of this would have happened. Now he's lost his most valuable employee and pissed off major clients. I shook my head, also at a loss for words. A few nights later, I was on a video call with Leo, explaining everything that had happened. Leo, a highly professional, tech-savvy CEO, was as refined as he was approachable. He smiled and said, Andy, I have great news for you. Our headquarters has decided to establish an AI R&D center in New Coast, and after a board discussion, we all agreed, you're the best person to lead it as our technical director. Honestly, when we heard you left your old company, we felt relieved. From now on, you'll have full control over technology R&D, talent development, and team building. I was momentarily stunned. Over the past few days, thanks to Brian, several top-tier companies had reached out with offers. I even had an opportunity to start my own company with VC backing. But after thinking carefully, I realized the timing wasn't right. The current funding environment was harsh, startups were collapsing left and right, and deep tech innovation required massive investment. One wrong move, and I could be trapped in a financial nightmare. With my family's well-being in mind, I decided to join this tech giant. Not only would it allow me to build my expertise in both technology and management, but I'd also have full autonomy. When the time was right, I could still start my own company. That clarity brought a sense of ease. On Monday, I returned to my old company for the project handover. Anna, one of my former colleagues, nearly spilled her coffee in shock when she saw me. "Andy, you're a legend. That was a masterclass move. Brian must be losing his mind right now." She grinned mischievously. "Oh, and remember to save me a spot. A big company Randy job is way better than a startup, structured career growth, unlimited tech budget." I chuckled and nodded. Anna quickly got into work mode, helping me sort out the documentation. After all, this was for my future employer, so every detail had to be flawless. Once the project was successfully delivered, Henry and Brian tried to convince me to stay once more. I politely declined. Just before I left, Brian called out hesitantly, "Andy, can you work on a different tech direction at your new company?" I smirked. He finally got it. Brian was worried I'd take my expertise with me. But without an NDA in place, what could he do? I gave him a polite yet firm response. No. Then I turned and walked away, steadily, without looking back. 2 years later, my former company failed to keep up with tech advancements, lost its funding, and was ultimately wiped out in the fierce market competition. Meanwhile, I had recruited all the top engineers, product managers, and talent from my old company into my new R&D center. Watching them thrive in this fresh environment, I often wondered, if Henry and Brian had valued their employees, would things have turned out differently? The colleagues they once mistreated were now all doing well. One evening, while taking a break at a cafe in Cary Center, I glanced through the floor-to-ceiling windows and saw something shocking. Across the street, a weary-looking sanitation worker, dressed in an orange uniform, was sweeping the road mechanically. I froze. Brian. His once dignified presence had been replaced by slumped shoulders, disheveled gray hair, and lifeless eyes. Nearby, a homeless man in tattered clothes clutched an old photo, mumbling, "My company, my house, my car. They were all mine." It was Henry. Brian looked up and spotted me. For a second, his eyes flashed with panic and shame. Then, as if something inside him snapped, he suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. "Andy, it's all because of you. If you hadn't taken the core team..." His voice broke, and he collapsed, sobbing. Henry sat blankly, lost in his own world. I shook my head, got up, and left. A notification popped up on my phone, an email from headquarters. Our latest funding round had pushed our valuation past $10 billion. My stock options had increased tenfold. I glanced back at the two pitiful figures one last time, then walked to my Porsche. Success and failure often come down to a single choice.